So here's a story I happened to see. I think it's actually kind of interesting. The story is coming from Android Headlines, which I've never actually heard of before, but I'm guessing Android Headlines must be some type of pro Android smartphone company. I guess that they're like pro Android journalists or something. You know, it's funny when I was talking about the fact that I wasn't going to get the iPhone 16 and I was going to wait until the iPhone 17 comes out with 2 terabyte. What was pretty interesting was the fact that I heard so many people constantly comparing Android to iPhone. I specifically said there's like 30,000 Android phones, but there's only really one iPhone. iPhone runs iOS, and that operating system makes it what it is. The Android system is Android, and it's across like, and I specifically said like 30,000 different types of phones. Now, what's funny is I actually looked it up after I said that because I was like, gee, I wonder is it really 30,000? And when I looked it up, I asked, Google. I was like, "Yeah, how many different types of Android phones are there?" And Google came back with the number. They said there's 24,000. So I was off by about 6,000, but I was damn close. But see, that's the whole thing. It's like Android sales are always going to be higher than iPhone simply because there's so many different Android phones. It's not like you can compare, you know, just individual Android phones to the iPhone because the iPhone will beat any of them on their own. It's like if you're like, oh yeah, well, what are the Galaxy S23 sales like? It's like for the most part, yeah, it might be pretty strong in Asia, but in America, it's not. It's like I know the Galaxy doesn't sell as many as they do here in America versus like maybe China or something like that, or maybe Southeast Asia. Because over there, they're for them, it makes more sense for them to buy Android phones because they cater to Far Eastern languages like Japanese and Chinese and most of those languages that have ideographs that you have to finger in and all that stuff. So let's see. So the story is here. The story is iPhone 16 Pro demand is low. So, wait, why isn't this coming up? Why the hell isn't this coming up? I'm trying to figure out why it's not coming up. Am I on the screen? Oh, that's weird. I'm not sure why it's not. Oh, there it is. 13 hours ago. iPhone 16 Pro demand falls short in its first weekend pre-orders. And I'll just say it like this. I'm not surprised that the demand is low because the reality is I think Apple made like several mistakes with this phone. And it's funny because, I lose my train of thought when I start ranting. But yeah, I'm not buying it specifically because it doesn't have a storage upgrade. Apple, I believe, is doing that on purpose because they want to force you to buy iCloud or they want to force you to upgrade how much you use of iCloud. I'm not doing that because I want the physical media in my hand. I don't want the virtual media. So the bottom line is I'm not buying it until the 2 terabyte storage comes out. Now, with those Android phones, the first thing somebody says, oh, yeah, well, you can get this Android phone. You can get a memory card, and the memory card's got like 2 terabytes or 3 terabytes or whatever. The bottom line is those memory cards, I don't care if it goes up to 4 terabytes. The problem is they don't have the fusion of iOS, iMovie, and your 4 terabyte memory card. That's what I need. I don't want your memory card. I want the flash system that's on this phone to have my videos and that to be integrated into everything else that I do. So you can't get that on an Android phone. You just can't. So when I say that they made several mistakes, if you're going to keep on upgrading the cameras in these goddamn phones and you're giving like 48 megapixel cameras and all that, it's like, what is it, 4K, 120 frame per second video. the file sizes that these phones create are getting larger and larger and larger. So if you're going to keep on upgrading these cameras, then you have to upgrade the storage exponentially. You have to. I'll tell you like this. Let's say they didn't give us 2 terabytes. Let's say they went to 1.5 terabytes. Let's say they give you 1.5 terabytes. I probably would have accepted that instead of like them just saying, "Oh yeah, well we're just going to stay with one." It's like if I had one in the iPhone 15 and I had one in the iPhone 14 and now you're offering one in the iPhone 16, then there's no upgrade. You didn't upgrade that. You needed to upgrade that. So hopefully, you know, people I don't, I've never seen Apple actually do a survey asking why didn't you buy something. I've never seen that. But hopefully word gets out and Apple gets the message. That was one of their biggest mistakes. They didn't upgrade the storage, or they didn't give you the option to have a larger iPhone. They call it a Pro, but they just didn't give you the option. The second mistake is that it doesn't have Apple Intelligence running the day you buy the phone. If you're going to sell this Apple Intelligence shit, if you're going to try to convince me that AI is the future and that like I need AI and I can't live without it, if you're going to try to do that, then it makes more sense for you to release this phone when the AI intelligence is ready to be used. It doesn't make sense because see, what the phones are going to be in the store on Friday. I'm definitely going there on Friday and I'm going to play with the phone. I'm going to test it out and feel it and all that. But the bottom line is, it's not finished. If I can't get my hands on it as soon as it comes out, it's not finished. Now, I could almost understand if they released the iPhone 16 with Apple Intelligence, but they didn't release it for all of the other phones that aren't iPhone 16. Because this way, when you go to the store, you pick up that iPhone 16, you're like, yeah, I've got something that everybody else doesn't have. And that's the whole point. It's like the feeling of exclusivity is gone. So, the new phones, yeah, they're going to have this camera button and everything. And I think the camera button should have been done a long time ago. But they're finally doing it now. So, okay, fine. They're finally putting the camera button on there. Once they put that camera button on there, chances are it's not going to ever leave. So, it's a multi-function touch camera button and all that. But is that really enough to sell an expensive device? You're just adding a button and everything? I just don't, I'm not feeling it. So right here, they say, yeah, Apple's iPhone 16 Pro model is seeing weaker demand than expected following its release, according to a report by analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, based on a supply chain survey and pre-order data. Kuo's findings highlight a noticeable drop in first weekend pre-orders for the iPhone 16 Pro, raising concerns for Apple's premium smartphone sales strategy. iPhone 16 Pro demand lower than expected. It says Kuo reported that Apple saw approximately 37 million units pre-ordered during the first weekend for the iPhone 16 series. This figure represents a 12.7 year-over-year decline from the iPhone 15 series pre-order performance last year. The iPhone 16 Pro in particular has struggled to meet the expectations that Apple and analysts had set, with delivery time shortening and sales lagging behind previous models. Okay, the lower demand from the iPhone 16 Pro suggests that customers may not be as enthusiastic about this iteration's new features, with Kuo pointing out that Apple's latest AI-driven feature, Apple Intelligence, is not yet available at launch. This delay, combined with strong competition in international markets like China, may have contributed to the iPhone 16 Pro's slow start. One indicator of the lower-than-expected demand is the notably shorter delivery times for the iPhone 16 Pro compared to its predecessor, the iPhone 15 Pro. Typically, longer delivery times reflect higher demand as supply chains struggle to keep up. However, Kuo's analysis suggests that pre-production shipments for the iPhone 16 Pro were higher than usual, which combined with reduced consumer interest led to shorter wait times. Despite the sluggish demand for the Pro model, the standard iPhone 16 and iPhone 16 Plus versions fared better in terms of year-over-year pre-order sales. Yet their contribution to overall iPhone shipments remains limited, as Apple's high-end Pro series typically drives the most revenue. Competition to blame? The fierce competition in China's smartphone market is another factor affecting the iPhone 16 Pro sales. Chinese manufacturers continue to challenge Apple's dominance with feature-rich smartphones at lower prices, which could explain why the iPhone 16 Pro is struggling to gain traction in this critical market. Let me stop right there. First of all, I've been to Southeast Asia plenty of times. Yes, over in Southeast Asia, they got all these other competing brands. They got Oppo, which obviously is some rip-off bullshit that is designed to sound like Apple. It's Oppo phone. Oh, you want an Apple phone? No. I want an Oppo phone. Now, I mean, it's so sad how blatantly like copycat-ism that is. It's just sad. What is it? Oppo phone is one of them. There's a bunch of others. Candy Mobile, like they have an entire industry designed to make fake iPhone clones that run Android. That's the one thing, and see people don't understand. Oh yeah, well you just stick with Apple and yeah Apple sheep and you stick with. It's like the thing that they don't seem to understand is iOS as an ecosystem. Once you get into that ecosystem, you tend to want to stay in that ecosystem. So upgrading from one phone to the next is really more about being able to run iOS on the newest, best hardware that's available. Like, I don't know what iPhone 20 is going to be like. I just know that I want iPhone 20 because it's got to be better than what I have right now. It has to be. I have no idea what iPhone 20 is going to be like. I just know it's going to be better in every single way. So when I use iOS on iPhone 20, I can expect that iOS will behave better, faster, and more efficiently than ever before, blah, blah, blah. But those Chinese copy rip-off phones, it's like those things, like if you ever actually, you go to the stores when you're in Asia and you actually go into those stores and you actually play with this stuff, most of this stuff is trash. Now, in fairness, like even with the Oppo phones, it's like when they had like the motorized FaceTime camera because they wanted to make a full screen display and they didn't want anything getting away with it. I played with some of those phones. I thought they were kind of cool, like with the motorized pieces, like where you have moving parts and everything. But then the question on your mind is, well, what happens if this breaks? See, these iPhones are pretty much single piece units. It's like when you get one of these things, there's virtually no moving parts for the most part. And, as long as the screen and the back is protected, it doesn't break, like if the glass doesn't get smashed or anything. For the most part, as long as the battery's good, these phones will always operate and they'll always pretty much work. But you have to wonder when you have moving parts on a phone, well, what happens if that snags in my pocket, or what happens if something damages that piece? Now I don't have a camera, and that's part of the reason why I'm pretty sure Apple said, yeah, we're never doing anything even remotely like that. And that's also part of the reason why I think they refuse to release a folding phone. I don't believe Apple likes moving parts. I think when they give you something, they want that thing to be a single hardened piece unit and it doesn't have any like articulation whatsoever. Now, these other companies, in order to beat Apple by offering specs that Apple doesn't have, yeah, they're willing to do stuff like that. But the problem is, you look down on their product. You're like, yeah, I don't like this, or there's something. I just feel that there's something wrong with it. But anyway, it says, although the iPhone 16 Pro demand is lower, Co. remains cautious about making any predictions for Apple's future production strategies. The company may be banking on the launch of Apple Intelligence in the fourth quarter of 2024 to boost sales, along with upcoming promotional events like the holiday season and China's Double 11 shopping festival. If Apple's strategies, such as the introduction of the Tetra Prism camera and maintaining current pricing, fail to reverse the iPhone 16 Pro's slower sales, Co believes the tech giant may resort to more aggressive pricing and product strategy in 2025. For now, the iPhone 16 Pro demand remains lower than anticipated, casting a shadow over the company's near-term sales outlook. If I'm not mistaken, Apple's stock slid a couple of dollars today. I noticed in one of my portfolios I was down a couple of dollars, but nothing to worry about, nothing serious. But the bottom line is, I personally feel as a longtime iPhone user, as far as I'm concerned, these products in and of themselves are perfect. The problem is that they are perfect. I really believe iPhone peaked somewhere around iPhone 6 and iPhone 7. That's my personal belief. Now, why do I say that? iPhone 6, I'll never forget, I was in Seychelles, and I had just flown with Emirates to Seychelles, and I was on vacation. And I was at the beach, and I accidentally got my phone wet, and the phone shorted out immediately. As soon as that beach water touched the phone, that shit shorted right out. The phone was hot, automatic, it just shorted right out. But when they released iPhone 7, if I'm not mistaken, at that point, they had dropped the headphone jack, and iPhone 7's main point was that it was water resistant to the point of being waterproof to certain levels. And when I got iPhone 7, and I was like, wow, this thing can actually go underwater. iPhone 7, I was afraid, I wasn't going to take that thing to the beach. But iPhone 7, the first thing I did was I dunked it in the toilet. I filled up a sink with water to show it off. I was like, hey, look at this. Look, my iPhone, you can put this shit underwater. And I was excited about that because that was a killer. That was a really good feature. Now, I know that there were Android phones that probably had water resistance, because I remember Sony at that time had a phone, and they literally had a display where they were like, yeah, look, we can pour water all over this thing and nothing happens. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, but I don't want nothing from Sony, and I don't want an Android phone. I want iOS. So when they put that in the iPhone 7, I was like, wow, this is awesome. This thing could go underwater. And if I'm not mistaken, the iPhone 7, also had 4K camera. If I'm not mistaken, it was either 4K 30 or 4K 60, but it was probably 4K 30 at that time. And then the 7S had 4K 60. But I was like, okay, fine. You got 4K camera and you're waterproof. Okay, yeah, I got to have it. So I upgraded from iPhone 6 to iPhone 6S. And if you remember, iPhone 6S had it had the fingerprint button. It had the Touch ID. And iPhone 6, between iPhone 6 and 6S, iPhone 6S was so fast that there were people who were complaining that when they would put their finger on Touch ID, it would open the phone so fast that they didn't get a chance to read any of their notifications. So what Apple did was they said, okay, well, you're complaining that it opens too fast, so we're going to slow it down, and we're going to make it like a two-step feature so that when you touch it, it'll unlock, but you're going to have to push it in order to make the thing open up. Because at the time, again, all you had to do was touch your finger on it, and the shit would open right up. And I loved that feature. I had always hoped, I was like, you know what? I hope they put this Touch ID thing on the back of the phone and make it the Apple logo. So then you could just take your trigger finger and you could touch the Apple logo and it would open up. But they never did that. And I guess they never will. But I like the idea of having Touch ID and being able to have Face ID. iPhone 7, yeah, they gave you the waterproofing. They took away the headphone jack. Now, as far as I'm concerned, taking away the headphone jack, that was actually a good idea. Making the phone more waterproof by taking away the headphone jack, as far as I'm concerned, that was a good idea. Because I much prefer the phone be waterproof or water resistant than to have that crappy wire headphone where, it gets snagged and it damages the cable and all that. And then when you go further into the future, you go to, by the time you get to iPhone XS Max and iPhone 12, now you're at that point where you can literally take the phone into the beach and you can actually get into the ocean water and you don't have to really worry if the contacts get any water on them. Because as far as I've seen, even if you get some beach water into the port, it doesn't corrode, which is fantastic. Now, the phone locks itself down and says, yeah, you're not allowed to charge with a power plug until this thing dries. But because of the fact that they added the magnetic charging, you can put the wireless charging pad on and you can charge it, even if the phone's port has been shut down because the phone senses that it's wet. So that was brilliant. But once again, all I'm saying is I really think that they peaked once iPhone 6 and 7 hit, because I think at that point, it was like, at this point, all you're going to get is like incremental upgrades. So, you know, it is what it is. You know, I mean, as a stockholder, I actually care about this. Like, I want them to do well. I want them to give me products that I absolutely want. But it's like they're making mistakes, and the mistakes that they're making seem like it's negligence rather than just an honest to goodness mistake. It's just negligence. You shouldn't be releasing your flagship phone if it doesn't have its flagship software. I mean, that's just obvious. Even if you had to rush a little bit, even if you had to wait, even if you had to say, because see, this is the thing, they did this to themselves. They made it so that every September, September 10th, 11th, 12th, whatever it is, they've made it so that now the world is expecting to see a brand new iPhone every single September. At this point, they've made it so that they can't hit a September without a new iPhone. They can hit September without new AirPods Pro. They can hit September without new, AirPods Max, or without new iPad updates, or without a new MacBook. Those don't matter as much. But they've really made it so that they have no choice, but every 365 days, they have to have a new iPhone out. And they've locked themselves, by expectation, they've locked themselves into an upgrade cycle. And I just don't think that they can, I really don't think that they can continue to impress if they've locked themselves into an upgrade cycle like that. Apple is not going to do a folding phone anytime soon. I really just don't, I absolutely don't believe they're going to do it anytime soon. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't care. I don't like the idea of a folding phone. I like the idea of being able to quickly pull my phone out with one hand, being able to operate the entire thing with one hand. I don't like the idea, oh, you pull it out, now you got to unflip this shit, and then you got to, I just think that's just stupid. Now, there's some people, especially women, they got cosmetics cases, so they're used to pulling shit out and flipping it open, and then sitting there and then touching their eyes up and their lips and all that. They're used to doing that shit. Me, I need one hand to be able to do all of this, and it's just a difference of philosophy, I suppose. But again, yeah, I think Apple really screwed themselves. I really think that they're going to have to face the music. They're going to have to see that the sales have declined. They're going to have to look at those stock figures in those board meetings. They're going to be like, hey, look at this. You see this line? Look at this motherfucker go straight down. Somebody's going to have to get fired. It's just like that. Somebody's, you said that you were going to make this the greatest, best iPhone ever, blah, blah, blah. You're fired. Somebody's going to have to lose their job over this. But Apple, they're not hurting. I mean, this is a $3 trillion company. Doing what they're doing is still profitable, even if their sales don't record break. What they're doing is still profitable. So by this time next year, chances are Apple will be a $4 trillion company. Now, I don't know about Microsoft, because Microsoft has the ability to jump ahead of Apple, especially when Apple suffers a sales decline. But one of those two companies, if not both, will be $4 trillion companies next year. So they did this to themselves. Like, if there's any Apple people listening to this video and they're doing like consumer research on the quiet or whatever, you should have had 2 terabytes and you should have had Apple Intelligence ready. Had you had the 2 terabyte system ready, I would have upgraded. even if I had to wait for Apple Intelligence, I would have upgraded. But you didn't. And you think that shit is cute, making people buy Apple iCloud and upgrade their storage. I'm not doing it. I'm not buying upgraded storage from Apple iCloud. So you shot yourself in the foot, and now you're going to watch your sales decline. And this is your fault. It's just your fault. So now you've got these Samsung fanboys and these Android fanboys. In fact, I don't even really think Samsung... I guess in America, Samsung is probably on top. But honestly, I don't think Samsung's at the tippy top of the Android market. They might be, but I don't really think they are. Because there's a lot of competition. And once you get, to that portion of the Android market, it gets very, very exclusive. And like some people are buying these ROG phones because they want gaming specifically. Some people are buying something else. They're like, oh, I don't want a Samsung phone. I want this because it has a built-in fan and shit. Like, I don't know. So bottom line is Samsung, they make that S23. Besides it has a better camera, it's like I don't see any reason to buy it. I'm sure everybody else does, but I just don't. Like, that stuff doesn't excite me at all. It doesn't. And I guess the thing that hurts to say is that now Apple really isn't exciting at all either. They're not doing anything radically new. And if the name of the game is not innovation, if the name of the game is refinement, then they need to focus on refinement. But it's like right now, it just doesn't feel like they're doing that. And it's like almost like they're tone deaf. It's like they hear us complaining, but they're not, getting on it, and they're not doing something about the complaints fast enough. So that's basically all I had to say. And that's the story. Of course, this is a story written by people who, these people pioneer Android phones. So, it is what it is. But again, this is not really a matter of opinion. This is a matter of fact if you're talking about declining sales data. So we'll have to see. I think, personally, based on, historical Apple as of late, I think the initial sales may be lower than the iPhone 15. I think as we move towards Christmas, I think sales will improve. And I think between Christmas and spring, I think sales will probably decline. However, once you get to tax season somewhere around April, it's possible sales may pick up. But I really don't believe that the 16 is going to perform as well as the 15 did. And definitely not as good as the 12 did. I think the 12 probably will have outperformed the 16 when you look at every single period of the sales, like when they take the sales data. If you look at every single period by period, I think the iPhone 12 Pro Max will outdo the iPhone 16 Pro Max in sales. I'm pretty sure it will. So that's all I got to say. So that's it.